Today, I wanted to have a look at another arcane artifact from the original analog age, the autobiography of Brian Barritt, The Road of Excess Psychedelic Autobiography. And Brian Barritt is kind of an obscure figure now, but is kind of best remembered for working with Timothy Leary in the 70s when Leary was developing his theory on human consciousness having 7 levels. And the two of them had a series of misadventures that began with Leary apparently or allegedly escaping from a minimum security prison in America, making his way to Algeria and ending up in Switzerland and helping to record with Tempel the album 7 Up. So it's a little obscure bit of musical history, and it's interesting on that level. But what interests me more as ever is how we got from there to here in this brave new world, and how you can draw this direct line of Leary's life and career going through the academia of the 50s and 60s to apparently being a countercultural renegade to then being kind of godfather of Silicon Valley, and now these same power structures influencing us all, that the solution to all of life's problems is continually microdosing ourselves, which is surely some kind of soma. So let's have a look at this. Just going to read a little extract, because you could easily do hours talking about this book, and I might do another video on it, but I just want to read this bit where they talk about Tempel, because the whole Krautrock scene that happened in Germany and kind of overlapped into Switzerland, it's very under-researched and underwritten, underrated. And this quite obscure book captures some details that might be worth recording, talking about, thinking about. Okay. So Barritt and Timothy Leary ended up in Switzerland as Leary was avoiding being deported back to America to stand trial. And it's hard not to think Leary was, some kind of intelligence project, product, agent, whatever. And you wonder, how does that happen where someone is part of the system, but at the same time is being persecuted and chased by the system? Well, it seems to be one of those cases where the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. Okay, let's have a look at this. The Kaiser, Sex, Drugs, and Krautrock. Enter Rolf Ulrich Kaiser, German record producer or Ear Records, with the Berlin group called Tempel. The Kaiser wants Timothy Leary on wax. The vinyl solution to all his dreams is tea on tape. Likewise, Kaiser is the answer to our prayers. We were gasping for new sounds until Rolf brought the heroes and heroines of Valhalla across the Alps to trip with us. Music is a powerful mood swinger, and carefully applied, an excellent method of orientation on trips. But we had burnt out all the Anglais-Americano tapes from the mid-60s, and since then, the music had become somewhat effete when played at the pace of life that we were living. I felt like Conan of Samaria with the Red Sonja and no music to make love to. We were not unaware of German electronic music, odds from Munich and sods from Cologne, a pinch of Stockhausen and a tad of Cage. But to really become obsessed with the krautrock scene, we needed the Kaiser and a good stiff jolt of Teutonic current. There is nothing like cosmic music to get you out of your body. Space rock at its finest will woo you free of your skin, point you in the direction of infinity, and still leave eternity for you to play in. Now it's synthesizers as well as sitars. Rhine maidens mingle with the oriental Horus. Thor makes it with Lakshmi, spread-eagled across a golden mixing desk, while Shiva, the supreme voyeur, masturbates to Khan and ejaculates with cosmic approval. We were cosmic couriers again, spreading the word of krautrock as we had spread the word of acid a decade earlier and cannabis in the beat era, revitalizing the flagging psychedelic tide by a fanfare of synthesizers blasting off to skyrocketing certainty. The contract is finally sealed in the Euchre Tavern in Bern. Sergius Golovin having arranged the seating so that Tim occupies the same chair that Albert Einstein regularly used while working as a clerk in the patent office. We decide to do a sonic representation of the 7-level system. The B side, right side of the brain, called time, the A side, left side of the brain, called space. The juxtaposition equaling time is space. Recording date is set at Sinus Studio in Munstergasse, Bern. Munstergasse, Church Street, has rectangular holes in the sidewalk covered by wooden shutters. Sinus Studios are underground. After Stash has shown us his family crest carved on one of the pews in the cathedral further down the road, and we have had a look over the parapet down into the foaming current that loops through Bern, and at the giant chessboard in Baronplatz at the rear of the cathedral, we descend into the studio depths. Oh, what a night it was, it really was. The crystal acid that David Solomon laid on Tim when he visited Corona is put in a 7-Up bottle and passed round. The name 7-Up goes well with the 7 levels of the neurologic system. So there it is already, the name of the game and the name of the record. At Sinus Studios, Tim is a mass of energy. Here, there, and everywhere, and writing the lyrics for the levels at the same time. He's making it up as he goes along, picking a few words descriptive of each level and making them into songs. He comes across as a smile and a flash of silver hair moving against a background of coloured lights bursting with ideas. He is no longer the almost burly guy we knew in Algeria. Now he's slim and fast moving. Behind him, the band is lit up in electric wonderland, the notes sizzling through his nervous ganglia like shots of pure current, flipping his neurons all ways. I back him as much as I can and jump about, giving out enthusiasm and goodwill while the studio roars with sound and mirth. Tim was really good at leading the whole thing. Everyone who went to Switzerland went with a different impression. To some who thought he was a guru, he was a guru. To someone who thought of him as a friend, he was a friend. If you wanted him to be a star, he could be a star. It was no problem for Tim. Manuel Gotching, Ashra Tempel, and a very underrated, unacknowledged figure in the creation of modern music that went from rock to psychedelia to electronica, dance music, etc. I think he just died a few years ago. The A-side space was a cacophony of tired old blues, West Coast rock and smoochy pop tunes almost obliterated by the howling synthesizers of the new tripping music. The second side, Time, was mostly taken from Ashra Tempel's previous record, Schwingungen Vibrations, on which they were convinced they had found the sound of paradise, with many mad embellishments. It described the three higher levels in a non-verbal terms, ending in a long hiss of white noise and the word she. She by Timothy Leary. She is highest intelligence before the beginning and after the end, creator of all life. She is binar DNA code residing in the single cell, reclining in her unicellular atomic sunship. She sees nothing but light reflected and transduced through illusory forms. She creates around her. She is microscopic sun star, Parvati Sakti, invisible to the closed eye. Her lethal brilliance blinds the optics. Mother proton whore, all visible forms are shadows of her radiance. She builds bodies to transport her. Her human body contains trillions of her. She is called disease germ because she infects, consumes, and destroys us at whim. She builds nervous systems to pilot the bodies, which she uses and discards. She is the time of our lives. A million years is a yawn. Species come and go like transient programs on our omni-vision screen. Being life, she is death. She is the lascivious killer harlot child bride, perfumed, cancerous rot eating our visions with implacable change. She is creator. She is the mirror eye of the sun in the heart of the atom. She is the syphilitic cancer germ on the ruby lips of Bridget Bardot. She is the grim Las Vegas dealer of the genetic tarot pack, idly shuffling human souls, placing karma solitaire. She shakes the million sperm dice in testicle cups, watching random impregnation with idle curiosity, stud poker. She is a regal, imperial, racist, cruel, elitist queen, spawning trillions of flesh slave robots, amused and pleased when once in 2 billion years a love song is created in the acid hole cellars of Bern, dedicated to her naked indolence. You're so beautiful, seedlight serpent girl. She is the river of honey sperm, champagne wave of tidal orgasm, sighing torrent, murmuring a flood of satisfied see you next Tuesday, shrieking against planes of time to deltas of star future, wailing cry of the midnight woman in heat. We float along the Adam evolutionary current, whirled up in the scream of she towards her son, willing sci-fi moths to the consuming flame of your bottomless black hole, sucked through white noise to ecstatic death in our hissing void. After the session, we all retire to Mindy's. Albert Minder is a tall, thin Swiss acid head who has played a major part as coordinator in the 7-Up production. He lives with his wife and kid in a farmhouse about 10 kilometers outside Bern. The farmhouse is approached by a dirt road across a field. The ruts are so deep that poor Stash can't get his low-slung Ferrari along it. The things we rich have to put up with. We stay at Mindy's for several days, having another couple of sessions at the studio. Tim, me, Liz, Dave, Ball just in from London, Hartmut, main man of Ashra Tempel with Rosie, Manuel and Bettina, their singer Broombar, Angela, Dennis, Robin, the Kaiser and Gil, his partner, as well as all Mindy's people and a sprinkling of kids. One day, some of us have an orgy, something like Ora Crum draws so well, and later trip out in the neighbouring fields. Rick and Andy, the bikers, turn up. Their vast Their visit corresponds to the arrival of the money, and Tim hands them a cruel 20,000 francs to go to Germania and get a car. They go by train and en route find themselves sitting next to a girl whose guy is a rep for Porsche. With her help, they arrive overnight at the top of the waiting list of used models, and 2 days later, while the rave is still going on, they are back at Mindy's with the lemon yellow two-seater. It was during this interval that Rolf Kaiser had a vision. He saw himself and Gil as the archetypal promoters, but beyond all the hype and pretense, their real aim would be to promote the expansion of consciousness via LSD and the music of paradise and bliss. There is a point where cosmic music interfaces with sublimity that evokes the divine. He had the best acid, the best music, and God on his side. How could he lose? It happened during the acid trip at Mindy's farm. Rolf and Gil were standing at the junction of two footpaths in the middle of a field. There's lots of space in this scenario. People splayed out on the grass in the sunshine over several acres. I happened to be looking from a nearby hilltop just as Tim passed by the crossed paths and tarried to say a word or two. At that moment, I saw Gil's face shining with adoration for Tim, and I saw Rolf see it too. I believe that Rolf's actions after that experience were an attempt to try and get Gil to see him as she had seen Tim that day. For that, I forgive him everything and make him a hero. He did it all for a look from the goddess. Dieter Dirk's studio is in a small village called Stommelin, just outside Cologne. And as Tim risks being picked off if he travels outside Switzerland, I go to Germany to supervise the mixing of the sounds. I make 3 journeys to Cologne in an effort to get some sense out of the tapes we have produced. I don't know a thing about mixing sounds. I can't speak German, and during the interval between the tapes being created and my arrival in Germany, Rolf has added all kinds of embellishments to the originals. To complicate it more, Sinus Studios had not been properly soundproofed, so individual tracks overlapped. Downtown, the first track was totally absent. The drummer no longer able to control his dozen or so arms, and the rest of us too blissed out to care. As representative of level 1, it was a blues, a Piscean-era sound, a track totally opposed to the heroic uprush of the rest of the record. Eventually, Rolf came up with a coloured singer from Cologne nightclub to do the number. I recorded a motorbike revving up and added it to Power Drive, the second track, and nailed the whole thing together with an OD of white noise. We had a great time putting it all together. Everyone piled in. We kept the original vibe and filled in the holes with electronics. At one time, Dieter Dirks had the studio rigged as a radio station, and the residents of the area could turn on their radios and 7 Up would come blasting out. On the B-sides time, I taped some of Tim's voice over a long-distance telephone and inserted it into the mix, and we were all well into a nice state of frenzy when Rolf spiked my coffee with acid and disabled me for the remaining studio time. Kaiser is ecstatic about hiring a train, holding a mobile party, and recording various groups as we hurtle across Europe. The finished product may not have been the finest sound ever produced on planet Earth, but it was not designed for Earth ears alone. The strong Syrian overtones and gamma riffs became instant hits on QXA QQX4, and the telepathic wah wah, ultra spaced with negligible rhythm, topped the charts in the rimworlds. In the psychedelic age, ritual has been superseded by music. With the right chemicals and appropriate sounds, we can conjure up a reality out of our pockets. No longer necessary the regal garments, evocations, and Masonic oaths of yesteryear. Wherever there is electricity, we can create a world. Maria has left us a sound interpreter by a group called Popol Vuh, named after the Mayan Book of the Dead. Holes seem to appear in space as we lie silently listening, and time bends, buckles, and dilates in a world outside colour and impossible to picture. Abstract sounds first at the top of the trip, without vocals or anything earth evoking. The sounds are warm, to combat any feelings of alienation or split offness between ourselves and the others in the room, as the air sinks into the ether. Then come epic dramas, and later, as we are straightening out with one foot touching the ground, sex and krautrock and roll. Operating at these rarefied altitudes seem to affect the oxygen in the room and at times almost smother the fire. Often I have swooped back to earth to find a last flicker of flame scuttling about a log, as if someone was trying to put it out with an invisible blanket. Lying back with eyes closed, the world is a vast deep, filled out with a trellis of geometric patterns that move in and out, back and forth, magnetically charged to attract and repel in a swaying, intertwining dance of sperm and ovary. If I hang on to this analogy, it is enough to place me on the genetic circuit 7, where the cells of the body strive forwards and upwards in their lust for life. The imagery here is against a dark backdrop and is painted by the old masters. Herds of animals gallop across my interior screen, race as a race running past the grandstand of eternity, with the leaders of the herd changing constantly as they are overtaken by the next challenger. Genetic scan, a term we used to preview from this level, check out a line of investigation, sometimes leads to a fatigue. A fatigue is a piece of the future as an antique is a piece of the past. Sometimes just catching the idea seems to make it happen. We are playing with the stuff the universe is made of, drawing on an inexhaustible source that is interlinked with all things, so that everything in the universe conspires to bring our request into being. After passing through cellular awareness 7, the current is decoded by the central nervous system. This is Tim's neurologic level, circuit 6, whereas up till now, the mind has hung in abeyance, suspended, disconnected, disembodied, watching the panorama of life and death. When it interfaces with level 6, it sparks with ideas and combination of ideas that read all ways and strive to give an all-round picture of everything it apprehends. With eyes open, the world looks something like the analytical cubist painters depicted with added color, because the nucleus of everything is everywhere. I call it the land of the giant suns. Level 5 is the world of Tantra, halfway through the land of incredible goodies, at the meeting point between the cravings of the senses and the absolute control of the self is the realm of sensuality. In the harems of the caliphs, the touch of her finger is an orgasm in itself. Her sighs become pictures, and you can see her perfumes and hear the flash of ecstasy as you meet your beloved's eyes. One of the reasons it is so difficult to define the upper levels is that it is so easy to lose the wisp-like essence of the observation. High up on trips, a faint sprinkle of stardust caught for an instant at the corner of my mind would hold its intrinsic meaning as long as I did not bring it into sharp focus or put it into words. When that happened, its essence always managed to get lost. Abstract sounds sometimes help to revive non-verbal concepts by the shapes the sounds leave on our minds. Time is not quite infinite in this region, but well on the way. A single note hangs like a diamond in a void of space. Behind it, the faint tinkle of far stars and neighboring galaxies do not detract from its purity, but surround it, refine it, extend it. The note shoots out star-like protuberances. A stringed instrument slides a gentle beam of light through the center of the construction, then fades into forever silence. The silences are so full of sounds below sound that you hardly notice when the next note is played because it blends in with the level so exquisitely, going out of its way not to intrude on the existing construct. Afterwards, when the sounds are played again the following day, the non-verbal concepts that you experienced while listening to them live again as flutters of meaning, shreds of infinity, or wisps of eternity that help to maintain the extended mental horizons gained on the trip. The Bern Festival added a big blast of energy to the Krautrock cause, and the synthesizers added a big burst of energy to us. I remember phoning from Cologne and shouting in a burst of enthusiasm that synthesizers were the emotional side, the heart of computer technology, and that nobody could afford to trip without one. One night in the downstairs room at Immensy, while Tim was proclaiming that musical communication was superior to words, since the nervous system operates most naturally and comfortably on the level of electronics. I went upstairs to get a packet of cigarette papers and found the room uncannily quiet. Soft orange lights were burning in two glass fishing floats. Otherwise, all was in darkness. Orion and Davy were both wired into a cassette player by earphone. They looked at me as if I was from another planet, some less evolved life form who by chance had stumbled upon a telepathic communication between two members of a more evolved species. Orion's head was nearly covered by the big silver earphones, and against the deep blue of a cushion he conjured the picture of an astronaut sunk into the uncharted regions of interstellar space. Davy's head was sticking out from under one of the fur covers, his hands operating the volume control on the earphones. A barely audible whisper of sound issued forth as he took them off. Yes, I came up for some skins. He pointed to a pack lying on a speaker, and I left the room as unobtrusively as possible. It seemed obvious to me that the sleeve of 7 Up should represent a 7 Up bottle. When you were tripping and you walked into a supermarket, it became a cosmic supermarket. Andy Warhol on acid, as it were. But the design Rolf finally fixed on was by folk artist Walter Wegmuller, a magnificent 7 coiled Mobius in the shape of the sign of infinity and filled with scuttling detail that swirled across both sides of the sleeve in a giant psychedelic wave. Kaiser has brought out Peter Meisel in his original partner and changed the logo of Ohr and Ear into a 7-circled mandala. As well as symbolizing the levels, it also represented the transparent nose cone of the time ship, heading straight out of the record cover directly at the viewer. All of us are science fiction readers, not doomsday, but the sort that has far out ideas, future projections, and if possible, some humor. It was the electronic sounds in combination with reading sci-fi and contemplating the higher levels that threw the switch suddenly. The psychic and the physical combined to become a sci-fi, and we were out of our bodies as well as our minds, and off on our synthesizers, dodging red giants and black dwarfs in search of a terminology to explain the enigma of our own electronic souls. There are times when Liz, Tim, and myself are all holding the same concept, holding mental hands, as it were, in the stratosphere, like 3 skydivers in freefall. In no time, we have built up a set of associations and patched them into flight lines that crisscross the nucleus of our very atoms, and are last seen sliding over the rim of a black hole, back past the singularity that triggered the universe, to the unthinkable meaning behind it all. And so to bed, lying with Liz, shining silver in her sleep. In her, I see the stars of a different galaxy, and her psychedelic coloring has turned into finely tuned radio waves that talk to me from far planets and pulsating stars. My body has gone robot, composed of the most exquisite materials. From within, I can see the changes taking place on the inside of my skin that is wrapped like a coat around me. It has a zipper down the front. I unzip myself, look inside, and see caverns filled with jewels that become planets. I feel star fields blow through me, and it comes to me that I am a being of infinite space choosing to manifest on planet Earth for a short time. I remember Tim's voice saying, "The four lower imprints are the legs of a space module. They are the grounding device." Now, there's a little bit more at the end of the book I'll skip to, but this is quite amusing here. Okay, let's skip. Yeah, there's a little bit here that's worth just adding as the postscript. Go from here. For a while, we worked with Rolf Kaiser, producing a series of tripping sounds under the Cosmic Music label. We agreed that if he rents the studios just outside Cologne for a weekend acid party every so often, we will help produce the sounds. The idea is the better the musicians feel, the higher will be the music. So we give them good food, drink, drugs, and atmosphere in the hope that a few tracks of pure sublimity will come out of it. Everything is recorded, and later Kaiser and Gil Letman edit the tapes. The first concert of Cosmic Music opened to an overcrowded auditorium in Paris. French police could not stop the cosmic music. 2,000 Frenchmen, 100 international critics, and 50 policemen joined the first night of Kosmische Musik aus Berlin, Cosmic Music from Berlin, in the totally overcrowded Parisian Theatre de l'Ost. The Berlin electronic rock bands Ashra Tempel, Klaus Schulz, and Tangerine Dream played their new sci-fi sounds for the first time to an international audience. The concert was promoted by the leading French rock magazine, Actuel. 50 policemen tried to stop the concert after the set of Tangerine Dream, Germany's oldest rock band. The reason, superabundance. But Ashra Tempel and Klaus Schulz didn't care about the police action and started their gigs. So, avoiding a panic of the 2,000 inspired listeners, Kosmische Music won a battle against the police. The policemen went home. Then the next highlight, the two English, Brian Barritt, Whisper, and Liz Elliott, made a session with Ashra Tempel, culminating in the psychedelic mantra, "Turn on, tune in, drop out." Both are from the high Both are from the tight team of Timothy Leary, who these days is waiting in prison in Los Angeles until the bail of $5 million is paid. Kosmic Music Information Flyer. Eventually, we concocted a krautrock supergroup composed of musicians from OR Records called the Cosmic Jokers. Manuel Gotching from Ashra Tempel, guitars, Harold Grosskopf, drums, and Jürgen Dulles, mellotron, and a piano from Wallenstein. Klaus Schultz, basically a solo artist and one of the founders of Ashra Tempel on synthesizers, and Dieter Dirks, bass and mixing. In between these raves, we jump into Rolf's VW Bug en route for Hanover, where Klaus Schulz is involved in a 10-day sound environment at the industrial fair. On the way, we spent a night in a quaint hotel in Hamelin to pay homage to the Pied Piper, a cosmic joker for sure. We also partied with Tangerine Dream, basically a surrealistic band influenced by leader Edgar Froese, having met Salvador Dali. Our job is to angle the sound towards sci-fi. Next venue is the British Forces Network in Germany to be interviewed about drugs. My line is, Timothy Leary is the solution to the drug problem. At our next party, the interviewer, dressed as a vampire, acted as compere. Lose your mind and gain the universe. For the gig, Kaiser had brought 100 blow-up armchairs to support the journalists he was flying in from Holland, Denmark, France, and Great Britain to evaluate the new sounds. Liz did a strip. Davy fell off the stage doing a robo-rock, and a mad time was had by all. Rolf had hired a coach to take everyone to dinner, with 7-Up blasting the passengers against the backs of their seats. Everything was on acid, and Rolf Kaiser and Gil Lettman ended up with a mass of tapes to sort out. While they are editing them, the groups are dying of starvation, and having given up hope of getting any bread, they band together to try and get their contracts nullified. Liz and myself, making irregular trips between Germany and Switzerland, are not getting the full picture till it starts appearing in Der Spiegel and Der Weltwoche. A couple of the Leary mob are forcing young musicians to become addicted to LSD and indulge in wild goings-on, while the producer Rolf Kaiser does exactly as he likes with the music and never gives the groups any money. The next episode opens with Rolf in court in Berlin trying to defend his actions. His contracts with the groups are made void. He is not allowed to release the Drogen music, and Liz and myself are branded as professional dope fiends, cosmic agitators, and foul flippers in general. We were lucky to be out of Germany when the whole thing blew up. Der Spiegel says we have already been put into prison, and the last I heard of Rolf and Gil, they were on the run. Postscript. Crucial Krautrock began at the end of the 60s with the arrival of LSD in Europe and ended in the mid-70s with LSD's exit. In England, it was suppressed by punk and driven underground, and apart from spasmodic uprisings, it remaining largely unheard and unrecognised until the great Krautrock revival of the mid-90s. It took 25 years for the world to appreciate the controlled insanity that generated Krautrock. We were a quarter of a century ahead of our time, but the acid-inspired sounds of the cosmic couriers did eventually get through. Most of the Drogen music is now on sale, and I can lean back, close my eyes, and let the subtle audio magic of the cosmic jokers transport me back to the sublime transcendence that I originally experienced in Dieter Derrick's Stommelin studio. At times, Rolf's passion drove him to all kinds of skullduggery, but his excesses are mere gossip compared to his achievements. He detonated a psychic time bomb dedicated to the goddess right in the heart of the fatherland. In hindsight, Krautrock was not remotely hippie. In its modern post-punk definition, it was soaringly idealistic and hard as nails. This cosmic music was played by painted freaks and longhairs whose attitude had never left the idealism or the communes collectives of the mid-1960s, which is from Julian Cope's Krautrock sampler. And we go from that to today, when Germany is being deindustrialized and people voting for Greens. And we look at these strange characters, these renegade Pied Pipers of the counterculture. We look back in askance at the strange past, and we look at them and can think of them as being incredibly original, idiosyncratic people, or we can look at them as credibly self-indulgent, narcissistic boomers. And wonder, what does any of it mean when we see their influences flowing into everything without any sense of the origins? I mean, this is a very obscure book, but there's a musician called Youth who recorded with them. Youth was well known for being the bass player with Killing Joke, and Killing Joke being a very strange band that wrote all its lyrics about the evils of a coming New World Order. And Youth being the same guy who collaborated with Paul McCartney on 3 different albums. And on Paul McCartney's most recent album, he has a song called Mountaintop, written as a modern ode to psychedelia and young people going to festivals like Coachella to take the latest psychedelic analogues. And we think back to the 90s, Paul McCartney gave interviews saying he would never want to recommend drugs nowadays, unlike the 60s, because they could be more dangerous and he didn't want to be a bad influence. Well, suddenly that's been totally jettisoned because we see McCartney playing private concerts for the employees of Apple, and at the same time now promoting psychedelics back into the culture. So it's like we see the avant-garde, the idiosyncratic avant-garde renegade with a 50-year time lag flows directly into the pop culture today, where our organic consciousness is being immersed in digital content that is reaching the technical stage where when we interact with a laptop and a phone and watching videos, they're actually altering and manipulating our nervous system, which is like we are having our nervous system being played like a piano by the technocrats. So combine the electronic enmeshment of our nervous system with the promotion of microdosing psychedelic drugs, tells you how far we have traveled into the future and the creation of this brave new world